thing, to let you guys know, I know a lot of people are wondering about live stream. There is a live stream that it will be happening. So if you have loved ones that can't be here tonight that you'd like to be able to share it with, you can go to monroesda.org, and there's a link on the page on that website to be able to go to our YouTube channel. And you can also search in YouTube itself, and you can just look up Monroe SDA Church, and there'll be a live stream link on there as well. So in case you have any loved ones that can't be here today and would really like to be able to see it, feel free to shoot out a text to your loved ones and say, yeah, check out YouTube, go to Monroe SDA. And you can also go to monroesda.org just on the web. So just an FYI. But makes me happy to see this many people here to celebrate the life of Eddie Bahnmiller. What an amazing guy. One of the highest compliments that I could ever get was to be thought of as someone even in the realm of being as friendly as he was. And what an amazing man. And my thank you to Mike for letting me welcome everyone to this. Eddie, I joined the Monroe SDA Church as a youth. I came in, I was about 13 years old, and we came from the Snohomish Church to the Monroe Church only because my brother and I were the only youth in the Snohomish Church, and there was a big youth group that was here. And from that time on, my brother and I have talked about it, my brother and I always were connected to Eddie, because Eddie was the man. Eddie was awesome. Eddie was an inventor. Eddie was a car guy. Eddie loved fast cars. He loved diesel trucks. He loved all sorts of great things. But the best thing about Eddie was that he loved you. And besides all the common ground that we had, Eddie was Eddie. And he was the best. And every time I got to see him, it was always a joy to see him every Sabbath walk in the doors. And by and large, most of the time, he was the guy greeting you at the front of the church. And to feel that special and that welcome was just always amazing. So just want to welcome you guys. We are celebrating his life today. And thank you all for coming. Let's pray. Father God, Lord, thank you that as we are here together, Lord, that your presence is here as well. God, as we celebrate the gift that you gave us when you gave us Eddie. He was a gift to our community. He was a gift personally to me. So blessed to have him in my life for as long as I did. And God, I just thank you for your presence with us as we share memories, as we sing songs, as we look at slideshows, as we celebrate the time that we were able to share with Eddie. And thank you, God, that you're with us as we mourn his loss, because we weren't designed to say goodbye to the ones we love. But we know, Lord, that there's a time coming where we won't have to say goodbye anymore. And so we look forward to that day, and we welcome you here with us as we honor his life. Thank you, God. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good afternoon. Is this on? Okay. I will tag on to what Ben said a little bit. I enjoyed my talks with Eddie. Eddie and I spent a lot of potluck Sabbath afternoons sitting and talking. He talked a lot about his family. He did talk about his inventions. He shared lots of photographs of the things he'd made and things he'd done. He talked about joy. He talked about racing his cars with friends. And we even experienced him driving fast. My husband and I were out with him one time, and he floored it a couple times. And even though he was 91 years old, he had good control of the car. We're still here. But he was amazing. I truly loved Eddie. He was one of a kind. And Mike was very blessed to have him for a father. I'm here to read a couple great scriptures. They give us hope, they give us joy, they give us peace. John 14, 1-3. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions, and if it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Mike gave me permission to add one more verse. And so I'm going to do this because of Eddie and his wish. Eddie used to tell me that he wanted to live to see Jesus come. Even though he was 91 years old and life could have been hard for someone 91 in time, he wanted to live to see Jesus come. That was his goal, that was his wish, it was his dream. And while he didn't make that in that way, he will see Jesus come because he will be raised to see that final day where we get to leave this earth and go to heaven. And so I'm going to read from 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. And so that would be a great day when family and friends are reunited, and I look forward to that day.
Will this be working now? Yeah, okay. Hi, it's overwhelming to see how many people showed up, but thank you so much. I love every one of you. And I can't say I won't be doing this a lot, but I'm gonna muscle through. But I'd love it if you would all join me in singing 485. I Must Tell Jesus. This is one of Dad's favorite songs, and I'd love to have you share it with me. Thank you very much. So the next thing on the program is a photo tribute, and I was thinking I would like to play a lot of Dad's favorite music, and I have one that every time people ask me to play a piano solo, Dad would say, play the country medley, and Mom would say, Eddie, you know it's too long. It's like 8 minutes long. Well, what goes better than a picture show with an 8-minute song, right? So that's what you're going to get now. I'm going to play underneath pictures of Dad. Hopefully you enjoy them, but the country medley was something that just, I guess, when he was growing up, all these songs just really resonated with him. So please enjoy. Find it first. timing wasn't quite perfect, but there's just a few more slides to go. This one I like, that picture there with him showing his stub finger. He was trying to present 91 years old, but I said, that's 91 and a half, Dad. Like, I always had to tease him about stuff. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you. So now, I need a clicker. I need to advance the slides myself. None of this automatic stuff. That's okay, I should have been thinking about it. So now I will try to describe and give you a feeling of what it was like to live with Dad. But first off, we need to do a little background on him. Now, Dad was born in North Dakota near Halliday on January 5th, 1934. And the family lived in the sod house. It was interesting because Mom did a lot of genealogy, and she described these sod houses as being very cool in the summer and warm in the winter. But since they were sod, you had a lot of bugs to put up with. They also had dirt floors, so it wasn't all great. But they lived in the sod house until he was 10 years old, and they moved to another farm, and they still didn't have running water and electricity for a couple more years. But Dad had really good memories about living on these farms. Dad could make lemonade out of lemons. I mean, everything was always great. This is the little shaver back in Sister Clara. Dad was on a horse there, and he loved the horses there. They did build little sheds and stuff to get around with the horses. And then, of course, I'm not really sure. There's a picture of the jalopy, and I think maybe Dad, that was like early experimentation with his auto mechanics and all that. But that's where Dad kind of got his interest. The farm equipment and everything else is what got Dad to go down the whole auto mechanic and just become jack of all trades. So let's see. So the family moved to Washington State in 1952, and there was a whole bunch of relatives that were making the exodus to go to Washington State, and so the family moved there. Dad did go to Auburn Adventist Academy for several years, but he never finished and graduated. Maybe Roland remember this, or Aunt Clara, but anyways, he joined the Army instead. So this is when he went to Germany. He went to Texas first and got basic training, and then he went to Germany. Anyways, his cousin Melvin Madkey had met a sweet gal named Juanita Wallace, and they had gotten married. So Juanita and Melvin are on the right in this picture, and that's Mom and Dad, probably still dating or something like that. But anyways, they told Dad about Joyce, Juanita's sister, and they said, she's an RN and she's single. And Dad says, well, I'm headed off to the Army, so what's the point? So he never really thought about her at all. But then after 19 months that he was in the Army, he came back and he found out Mom was still available, and actually she was going to be coming to live with Juanita and Melvin. So that's where he decided that he would actually give her a try and ask her out for a date. Well, Mom was very quiet when they went on dates. Dad would ask her questions. She'd always be polite and respond, but then that was it. She never tried to keep the conversation going. So Dad thought, well, this is going nowhere. So he thought, I'm going to give this a test. He said, I'm just going to be quiet. And there was awkward silence, and finally Mom started fidgeting around. She says, you must think I'm really boring, don't you? Well, that seemed to open up the floodgates, because all of a sudden they started talking, and one thing led to another, and chemistry started to develop. So then about that time, Uncle Melvin and Aunt Juanita decided they were going to move back east to be closer to Juanita's parents. And Mom said, since I'm living with you, I will go ahead and move with you. And Dad says, maybe I should move too. So they did. And they packed up, and the four of them moved back east. Well, along the way, Dad said he wasn't really sure if she was going to stay with them, because 2 times he ran out of gas, and 2 times he was pulled over by the state troopers. She said, "Oh, I don't know." But anyway, she hung in there with him, and somewhere along the trip, he said that he loved her. And then the next day, he asked her to marry him, and of course, she said yes, which was nice. Otherwise, I wouldn't be giving the story, right? Yeah. But after saving some money, they decided to move to Florida, where Mom's youngest sister was living. And so they moved down to Florida. Mom found a job immediately at some hospital. RNs always be able to move around and find work readily. Dad, however, took a while to find him a job. I remember Mom saying all he did was sit around a pool every day, and I worked. But he did find a job at Martin Marietta, a missile company down there, and he worked there for a while. But at some point, they said, we want to get back to Washington State. And I think Melvin, Juanita, everybody moved back again. So Washington or bust, there they are, moving back. So anyways, that's where I kind of entered the picture when they moved back. Of course, I'm going out of sequence here. I have a little joke here, but it's going to fall flat. But because I was going to say, I was born on January 2nd, and they got married on the 3rd. But I have to say, well, I was born in 62 and they were married in 59, so there's a little, it wasn't like a had to get married sort of situation. There I am, a little bouncing baby boy, Michael, when he was young. So not too long after I was born, Mom was pregnant again. And the pregnancy was going just fine until about a week before she was expected to deliver, and things got real quiet. And she said she felt the baby struggled and all was quiet. And she told the doctor she feared something was wrong. And it was. Her baby was born stillborn. So back in the day, the O factor, the O positive or negative, that was what basically killed my brother, was that I think she built up antibodies when she was pregnant with me. And so it fought and won. So my brother was stillborn. And they were too concerned to try again, so they decided to still grow the family, and they adopted my sister. And she was welcome in June of 1967. She was a cute little girl, very cute little girl. And anyways, so after we had got my sister, Mom and Dad decided to build their house on a piece of property that Grandpa gave them. And I'm not sure you can see the little red arrow there. This is a picture of the Sky Valley, and this is where I grew up, and this is where Dad spent his whole life. He loved his little parcel of heaven there. And Dwayne and Kathy, you can see your house now too. That's where Grandma and Grandpa lived, in the house below. And Claudia and Roland just live up there too. But this was where Dad spent his whole life and made it his own, that's for sure. So life was pretty typical for us. I mean, Tracy and I, we got along. We also fought. We squabbled and everything else. But, Mom was busy being an RN. Dad was working long hours in the woods and all that. Then in May of 1973, something happened that changed our lives really substantially forever. Mom's parents decided to move into Washington State to be closer to Juanita and Joyce. And so they made all the plans, sold a house, packed up a moving van, and they moved across the country. Well, they arrived on a Friday of, I think Mother's Day weekend is when they arrived. And we were so happy to see them. And then the next day, Mom said, well, let's go into Monroe, and I can show you a house I think it would be great for you. And so we all piled in the car. Anyways, we were head on going to Monroe by a drunk driver who crossed the center line, and Mom put on the brakes. But you can see the crumpled car up there. She was hurt very bad. I was hurt too, but Grandma Wallace was killed, so we only had her one day. It happened so many years ago, but it still hits me to this day. But that's why I brought it up, because Through it all, there was Mom, me, Tracy, Grandma, and Grandpa. We were all hurt, but Dad wasn't with us. And so it was his love and support that really got us through this period of time. Mom was crushed lung, pelvis, elbow broken. She had a tracheotomy, a broken jaw. I mean, she really got beat up, and she was crippled the rest of her life. I had major leg problems, and I had a fractured skull. My eyes didn't, stay focused and aligned and all that. I'm having problems again with that, but we were pretty bunged up, and it took a long time for us to actually recover from this. But I bring this up because it really did change the dynamics of our family, but it also just reminds me of how much Dad did. I mean, he was holding down a job. He worked long hours. He ran into Everett every single day. He visited us. He still kept the house running. He made improvements to it. I mean, it was just crazy how much he did, and he put up with. There he is. So there's so many things I'd love to tell you about Dad. I need to cut this, fairly short because he's to me, he was a paradox. He could be so charming, and yet he was so bewildering. He was intelligent. I mean, you can see, he was really intelligent, but just naive, too, in a lot of ways. He was very headstrong, and yet he could be yielding. He could listen to people. So he was an interesting guy. He was far from perfect, but he was also one of the most genuine people that I have ever met. He was himself. So first and foremost, Dad was a Christian. His faith was unwavering, and his belief was strong. He and Mom would always have daily devotions when he could. Otherwise, if he was out in the woods, he would have Bible study while he was waiting for the truck to be loaded or waiting for the next, available spot to be loaded. I can remember him always sitting down and having devotions. They studied God's Word a lot. He would also talk with anybody. He was a talker. But if he talked with somebody and he felt like they were feeling dejected or unheard or anything else, he would spend time and say, "Can I pray with you? Can I give you any assistance? Can I just be your friend?" And he would always come back to these people and find out how they were doing. And a lot of people appreciated that about Dad. He has a very compassionate soul. He also had really simple but wonderful prayers. They were heartfelt, and you knew that what he was saying, he believed, and it was just so wonderful to hear him pray. He didn't necessarily have a good command of the English language. It was not his first language, but he still was able to pray wonderful prayers. And he studied the Bible daily. A lot of times, because he couldn't read very well and all that, he would listen to tapes. So I remember him working, doing stuff around the house and all that. And he always had tapes or the radio playing, and he was listening to all of his devotionals. He was also very involved with the church over the years. He had a nice singing voice, so he did a lot of music. There was a lot of people here that probably sang duets and trios and all that kind of stuff. Yep. It was pretty sad for when his voice started to falter and give away, just like his dad's did, because he loved to sing. He also was a Sabbath school superintendent for many years, and he would always draw upon stories from North Dakota, and he had a way of making North Dakota sound like paradise. It was like, man, I wish I had grown up there. He was also a deacon in the church, and he spent a lot of time visiting people on the weekends, or even during the week. He would go out and visit people, always reaching out. "Are you okay? Can we do anything for you? Will we see you back in church again?" He was also a lay activities leader. I'm not sure if many people would even know what that is anymore, but lay activities was kind of like when you went out on Saturday afternoons and you did community outreach. You would, hand out flyers or you do stuff, and I hated it when he got elected. I want to be out hiking and doing stuff instead of going door to door. But Dad was so good at talking to people, he loved it. So, it's like, okay, I'll just have to put up with it. Also, on the first Saturday or Sabbath of every month, Dad would join Mom, and they would go into prison ministry up here. So this prison system here comprises several. There's the Reformatory, there's the Twin Rivers Correctional. Back in the day, there was another place called Honor Farm that would, so we And I joined them a lot of times because I'm a piano player, and so we did a lot, years and years and years of just coming into the prison and doing outreach. And the guides love Dad. He's so relatable. And then also on the second Sabbath of every month, Mom and Dad would do little community things at the Regency Care Center and at Brookdale. And we would put on an hour-long service in each place. And of course, the people loved it and all that. And it was a little bittersweet when Dad got admitted to Regency Care Center, because it's like Dad spent so much of his life serving others, and now he's the one that has to be served. But some people did remember him from there, and it was very special. All right. That was a nice singing voice one. That should have been playing a long time ago. Anyways, that's Cousin Ray singing with Dad at some service there. So, as you know, Dad spent time in the Army. So that's how he kind of ruled the home. It was like very military. He was strict and firm. We didn't get to sass. We didn't get to talk back. We had to do our chores. We had to help around the house. I mean, there was all this kind of stuff. And if we really misbehaved, and it's just like, we would get spankings. I hate to say that in this culture nowadays, but back in the 60s, that was what people did. And there's a few that I really remember, and it's like, you know what? I deserved them. We went to Carlsbad Cavern, and instead of enjoying everything, I threw a hissy fit. I can't remember what I was mad about. I don't think I liked the food I was getting or whatever. And I howled, and it was echoing through the chambers there. And the only thing they could do was, and that quieted me down. And there was another time when we moved into the house that I was just showing there, and I decided I was a big enough boy to go walk down to the river by myself. So I took the dogs, and I went down there, and I climbed over rocks, and I did stuff, and it started getting dark. And of course, Mom and Dad are frantic. So when I come home, guess what happened? There's got to be any more of that kind of behavior. Yeah, that was like, and Dad oftentimes, bless his heart, he became more introspective the older he got, and he said, I am so sorry that I spanked you and all that. And I said, Dad, it can't have been all bad because I turned out okay. Or did I? I don't know. He kept my hair styled like the Army. This is the 60s, remind you. And everybody was in the hippies. Everybody had their hair growing long. Not Michael. He cut it in a buzz cut. He would also take some shaving cream, and he had a block of alum, which is some sort of a mineral. He put the shaving cream in and then use the alum and just and get your hair nice and stiff, and then just comb it straight up. And there I was. I hated it. And he would also cut my hair. And there was every time he cut my hair, I don't know why I didn't say anything, but he would just say, sit still. And it's like, he kept twitching, and he said, sit still. Well, one day Mom said, I'm going to cut your hair a little bit. You got something, growing on there. And she started to cut him, and it's like, ow, it's burning. No wonder Mike never sits still. We got a new razor after that. Sundays were meant for working, and we got assigned our tasks at breakfast. And he would always say, guess what I have planned for you today? I just hated that. But, he would give us, like pulling weeds or mowing the lawn or like cutting blackberries and all that kind of stuff. And, I just dreaded it. But, that's the stuff I enjoy. And when I went home to see him later in life, that's the things I would go out and help him with, because I love doing that. So he planted the seed, so to speak, Now, Dad may have been a very strict man, but boy, he had a huge heart and a playful heart too. He loved to play pranks on people all the time. Roland's the same way. It's in the blood, but there was one time I had a hot chocolate, and I can't remember, I got distracted for some reason. I turned around and I kept drinking it, and it's like, the deeper I got into the cup, it was like, what's wrong? Well, unbeknownst to me, he had slipped a little lemon pepper in it, and it had like sank to the bottom. So at first I didn't taste a thing at all, but as I got into it more, and he could hardly contain himself just watching me, because I was getting worse and worse and worse. Then there's another time I remember him. We were at some place, and we were outside having a picnic, and somebody was laying there trying to get a little nap in, and he took a little piece of grass, and he kept tickling them, and they thought it was a fly. never opened their eyes, but he just kept tickling them, swatting at stuff, and he thought that was so funny. He just had so many things he loved to do. He was also, I considered to be kind of an expert storyteller. He would fabricate stories. They weren't really stories. They were just like fantasies. But with my sister, she loved candy, so he would always bring up stories about how he's going to build her a factory, and it was just going to be with all this equipment and stuff, all of his angle iron stuff. He was going to crank out candy and sweets and all, and she just loved it. With me, I was more into all the equipment and fantastic things he was going to make. So at one point, I remember him saying, I'm going to build a snowmobile when it's cold out. He said, I'm going to cover that with some sort of little enclosure. And he just kept talking about how I was going to have a little room in it for this, and we would even have a little potty, and so we wouldn't have to stop, and we could just go. And it just kept building up bigger and bigger and bigger, and finally I just kissed his arm. So excited about what he's going to build for us. He did that a lot. He had all these wonderful stories. Since he was so musical too, he would teach us all these wonderful little tunes like, shall we go for a walk today, walk today, walk today? And we would sing that all the way to church, and there was other little songs that he taught. And to me, they still bring back such happy memories. Friday nights were always special for us. We called something that what we call it tricks, and that was just a whole bag of various things. But he would lay on the ground, and he would have us stand in his hands when I was laying there, and he'd hoist us up, and we were trying to balance, and then we'd do like these dead man drops where you had to trust somebody and just like fall backwards, and he'd catch your head. I could do it, my sister never could. He taught us how to do various, headstands and all these other kind of things. And every Friday night, he'd come home just tuckered out and said, let's play tricks. And he always would. He also had these goofy things that just bring back a smile to me. Every time I went through a tunnel, he'd have to honk the horn. I mean, it was automatic, and I still do it today. People are going, what? It's like, sorry, it's my dad. He'd also do things when he was driving, and the Capri had a horn that was at the end of the turn signals, and it would bug Mom, but he would be driving along, all of a sudden he'd start to twitch, and she'd go, oh. He'd twitch and honk the horn. It's just like, what is he doing? But us kids are like, yes, we loved it. He was just so goofy. He never would show that to people like you all. I mean, it was just for family. I'm a goofy with anybody. It doesn't matter. But, Dad, trust me, he was pretty silly, and it was funny. He also had a knack for making a lot of noises and stuff. I mean, he could make a calf sound that's like mooing, and his like hubcaps falling off the cars were like clank, 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 going wow, 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 and that would keep us entertained for hours. I mean, he had so many. So as we were growing up, he did more things than just these little things. He, for some reason, designed a playhouse for us that he made up himself. It was a hillside that he actually cut into, and he terraced it. And the playhouse was built on 4 stilts, and it went up above the level of the hillside. But underneath was a giant sandbox that I loved. And now when you climbed out of the sandbox, you would walk up some stairs, and then you'd like just wrap around and walk a few more, and there was a whole playhouse there with a deck all the way around it. And off the end of the deck was a giant slide. And so, I mean, that must have taken a long time, but we loved it. And then after that, then he ended up building a giant swing set for us, and I loved the rope swing. I would use a ladder, and I'd climb up the ladder, and I'd swing way out over the swamp that we had there. It was great. But what I consider to be the crowning achievement of his, that's us playing tricks at night. Oh, this doesn't show up too well. Can you see it okay? There's somebody dangling there. So I'll give it away. One of the things I asked if you knew what was out in the lobby was actually the seat for this. So this is a cable car ride. We were in Everett, and Dad found a cable car that you would just sit in it and you'd like coast down to the bottom of the hill. But then you had to like drag it all the way back up to the hill again and then ride it down. He says, I don't like the dragging that back part. I like the riding part. So he thought, I'm going to figure this out. And he would just go silent and be thinking about stuff. So what he ended up doing was there was a part of a crane from work that he brought home, and we dug a giant hole, and he set that part up in the hole, and we cemented it solid. Then he had a cable that he strung from this anchor all the way down to that first tree, and you can see a little platform there. And then he built a whole set of staircases up to the second tree, and then he strung the cable back again. So you took that little chariot that we have back there, you put it on the cable, you went screaming down the hill, but it was just at the right angle, so when you got to the platform, you could just step off, and then you'd walk up the staircase, and then you just like ride it slowly back. Well, you're dangling about 25, 30 feet up there, but there's people here who rode it when they were kids. Yeah. I mean, to actually spend that much time and do that, it was pretty neat for us kids, you know? Unfortunately, that was there for many, many years, but then one year they took a trip back east, and they called up Grandpa and said, how's everything at the house? He says, I got bad news. Oh, what happened to the house? Now, the cottonwood trees, they blew over. That was the end of the cable car ride. But I just found a seat there in his pump house, and it's like, oh, my long lost friend. Oh, he loved animals, too. He always had a German Shepherd around, so this is his favorite. This is Murdoch. Murdoch, I thought, was a bonehead, but he loved Dad. It was the only dog that would actually spend time with him by his side and not be freaked out by all the loud noises and the sparks and all the grinding that went on. Murdoch would hang by him all the time, and that's Murdoch when he was a puppy. And, of course, who can forget Pee-wee? Pee-wee was brought home by my sister, but they became my dad's dog, and Pee-wee was the animal, the companion that he had after Mom died. So they were fast friends too. So Dad and I also went to a lot of shows together. A lot of that picture that I made of all my favorite memories of Dad always had to do with all the shows we went to. And Dad we didn't just walk through and see everything. Every display, Dad would stop and say, I got to talk to these people. I got to ask questions. And I'm going, I am ready to go home. Nope, we're only halfway through. You better hunker down, Michael. We got a ways to go. Oh, of course, then we have some other stuff, good old country rednecky stuff. I mean, we did target practice, every once in a while. That was always fun. Dad would save up all these aerosol bottles and stuff, anything that had a little, of compression in them or whatever. So we'd shoot them and bam, it was exciting. And then we also got into, early on, into toy helicopters. If you can see there, we were down at the school gymnasium, and he got one for me and one for him, and he was good at it. Now, I could fly it away from me pretty easy, but turning around, it's like I couldn't switch my head, so I kept flying it into the wall and stuff, but he did perfect. It was like, man. Oh. Let's see. I'm on number 28. Okay. So I'm going to switch gears here because Dad was one of the most positive people I know. Sometimes it's like, do you not even feel any kind of stress or grief or anything? Because he was just always so positive. He had a lot of challenges in his life, and I just was going to point him out here. When he was young, a year and a half old, he had an older sister named Erna, and she just suddenly died from a ruptured appendix. And while he doesn't remember her that much, he talked about her a lot. It still felt like there was a hole in his life. Also, I'm showing this picture because it was on another slide, but he's got the stub finger. Now, when he was just a teenager, he cut the end of his finger off in a sawmill accident, and that was his writing hand. So he just he suffered from it. But rather than be like, oh, poor me, I've got a missing finger, I'm sure there's kids here, Now, my story was, he got a sandwich out, and he was so hungry, he bit into it, and was like, oh, there's his fingers gone. But there's other versions of the story, but yeah, all the kids know about that. And of course, his second son was born dead, and that was devastating. And while Dad was not part of the car accident, I think his ordeal was just as traumatic because he had been in Monroe that day rehearsing for some music program, and as he was driving home, he come up on the accident. To see his family laid out there must have been horrible. He was grief-stricken. He chased the ambulance all the way to Monroe, then into Everett, because we were all being transported to critical care units and all that. But somehow he survived. He was amazing. He come to visit us every single night. He found time. I think I've already mentioned this stuff, but he found time to actually refurbish part of the house. So when Mom came home, she'd have something nice to look at. He was a real trooper. All the things that he did to make our lives easier, and because I was in a body cast for months, and he would pack me around like I was, styrofoam. But I was pretty heavy, and he just did all this stuff for us. And I'm sorry to say, but my sister adopted. She was loved, but Mom and Dad never decided to lie to her. They said, "You know what, Tracy? You were adopted." We didn't want to lie and say, "Oh yeah," and just have her find out later on. But Tracy never could get past the fact that, why didn't my real mom want to keep me? So she didn't have a whole lot of self-worth or self-respect. And she ran away from home when she was 13. She got involved with a lot of bad gangs, and she got jail time and all that. But Mom and Dad were there with her every step of the way. And Tracy, as she got older, she developed alcoholism and all the related things that go along with that. But Dad made rather than have Tracy live in the house and really felt like she was confined there, he put a fifth wheeler out in the back, and he made a picket fence with a deck and a cover, and he just really fixed it up so she would have a home to live in, but wouldn't have to be living under the same roof. And she had her challenges, but Dad was able to absorb all that. And I think at the end, they got closer for it. Also, his little brother, Leroy, Sonny, passed away from a massive heart attack, and that really devastated Dad because they were close. And I've got such sweet postcards sent back and forth between the two of them that just showed how close the relationship was. And also his mom, she passed away unexpectedly too. And since we lived next door to them, that was a huge, huge impact. It was a huge impact to me, but it was to Dad also. Back in 2015, in December, Dad, being headstrong, was up on the roof doing something. Mom went outside to say, "Come on in, it's time for lunch." But she found Dad crumpled at the base of the ladder there, and he was really, really messed up. He doesn't remember anything, so it was enough to traumatize him to where he doesn't remember. So we can only speculate that either he missed a rung or something happened, but he really injured his knee and everything else. But mostly every single bone in his head was crushed or something. I didn't show you the real gory parts because he was really beat up. But because of that, he had a detached retina that he had to endure. That basically they take you home and have you lay on your side for a couple weeks, and not a complaint out of the man. He was just wonderful. And the same thing, they had to reattach a lot of the bones internally, so they had to wire his teeth shut, and that's where he's actually feeding himself through too. But never once did I hear him complain about his situation. In fact, when he got his teeth unwired, of course, where your teeth are wired together, your jaws are really stiff. But he loved tater tots, and he opens his mouth up when the wires are undone, and he says, "Is this big enough, Ma, to get a tater tot in?" So I wanted with a tater tot. He battled high blood pressure his whole life, and that also, led to diminished kidney function, and there was a lot of issues around that. He did a lot of, hospital visits and everything else, but he just endured it like he would have to. There's another one here. This may be not news to some people, but I bring it up because it just shows how much love they had for me. Back in 2018, I think it was, during the summer of 2018, some officer of the Seattle Police Department called them up and said, your son is in horrible danger. He was in a taxi cab, and something went down where there was some international, it was something. They also had enough information about me to make it sound like it was believable, because they knew where I lived, and there's all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, Mom and Dad didn't have the savvy, I think, to really probe. They put me on the line, but of course it was an actor that was crying hysterically, so you couldn't tell who it was. Anyways, they said that the only way to actually have your son save his career, save his reputation, just save his life, basically, was that we have court proceedings that need to be met, and you need to start coming up with money and do it soon. And so they fell for it. The banks and the UPS tried to get them to stop, but they wanted to protect me. $150,000 they got. And finally, they couldn't figure out why I was always so happy all the time. And finally, Dad took me aside. He says, can I ask you something? And he just, said, okay, I have to ask. And he asked me about it, and I said, no, what are you talking about? He says, well, okay, the money's gone. The money's gone. But Dad, being the positive person, it's like, okay, well, we'll just tighten the cover. We'll just, adjust. And Mom never did. It just bothered her. She couldn't get past the fact that it's like, I'm an educated woman. How could I let this sort of thing happen to me? But they only did it to protect me. They only did it to protect me. That is love. That's right. Anyways, Mom never, like I said, that was when she kind of started her decline, and Dad spared no effort in trying to figure out what was going on. He didn't want the love of his life to get any worse. And so, of course, when she passed away in her sleep, he was gutted. He was gutted. It was tough. It was really tough. But, rather than caving in, he didn't start reaching out. He's already been talking with a lot of people on the phone all the time, and he just reached out more. He talked, he actually found more relatives that he had never really spoken to, and one of them was Lisa from Arizona, and all of a sudden she became part of our lives, and it was wonderful. So he just reached out, and he made his family bigger, and I admired that in Dad. He also developed sciatica late in life, and anybody who has talked with Dad knows that he loved to make firewood. Firewood. Every time we would go, it's like, I wonder if they want that tree. I can make firewood. But his back was hurting. He couldn't walk any distance without having this shooting pain in his back and all that. But he couldn't stop himself. So even though he had so much pain, he had to go get firewood. This is down in Sultan at some mill where they have like remnants and stuff. And he said, let's go down and get firewood. Actually, we did 2 trips that day. And he is kind of hunkered over there because he's hurting, but he's so excited because he got 2 loads of firewood. It's like, I don't get you, Dad, but bless your heart for being able to push through all this. Because of this fall off the ladder and everything else, he ended up having to have knee replacements. And so I went home to live with him for 2 weeks because knee replacement is a pretty big deal. It's him. I got him strapped to a machine, and it's slowly exercising his leg. And bless his heart, he's taking a nap. I'd put him on that. I'd go out for a walk, and he'd just be sleeping away. He could sleep anywhere. But the concern was like, when is he going to be okay to be out by himself? And he kept pushing and saying, I'm ready now. It's like, I don't think so. Well, they had nurses that would come in, And they would say, well, let's see how well you do this. And one of the, a couple of things are you able to get off the commode okay? Can you actually get into the shower? Can you drive and all that kind of stuff? And he had a way around everything. So for the shower, he would throw a towel over the frame of the sliding door, and he would dangle in it and swing himself in. It's like, really? She said, well, you got yourself in. I guess I can't say no for that. It just was incredible. And he just had a way of like, don't worry about me. I will figure it out. And before I left, I said, okay, I'm going to give you one weekend. I'm going to come back on Monday, but I'm going to give you one weekend and just to see how you do. And I said, but you have to show me, can you get in your car okay? And can you do all your other things, like get firewood? This is him. And on his little tractor, he says, yes, I can get firewood. I can get myself in the car. Go home. Where there's a will, there's a way. So Dad pushed through all this stuff, and he had a phrase, and he said it was like his great-grandfather said it, but it was kind of like in German, it has a lot of meaning tied up with it. But it's like, just let me live. Just let me live. So it was, and I did a lot of that with Dad, because, like I said, he was bewildering, and it's like, are you sure? But it's like, it makes him happy. I'm just going to let him live. So he had so many. Well, I kind of went out of order here a little bit. What are we on? 33. Sorry. Anyways, but Dad also had a lot of musical talent. He had a voice and everything else, but he also played trombone when he was younger, and he taught himself how to play a saw. Just a regular old. You hold it between your legs and you bend the blade, and and he played that pretty good. And then he also learned how to, and I think there was somebody here named Mike Riston or somebody. He learned how to wet his fingers, and he could play his hands with a whistle. Yeah, he did a lot of really interesting things like that. But he was also a jack of all trades. It's like, wow, why didn't it rub off on me? Because he was an auto mechanic, he was a carpenter, he was a plumber, he was an electrician. Didn't do it always right, but it got the job done. And he, even though he worked long hours in the truck, this is him in the evening. You go out and all these tools are whirring and thumping away, and sparks are flying, and he's creating more inventions. That's what I'm going to say. Probably everybody here has had Eddie look at their car at some point. Now, the newer cars are a little bit more computerized, so he probably wouldn't do it. But back in the day, everybody brought their cars over to Dad to have them serviced. So even though he was a really good mechanic, he also knew how to build things. And I talked about the playhouse. Well, when his kids got too old to actually use the playhouse anymore, he said, well, I'm going to take that. I've already got kind of like a structure there. And so what he did was he started building on, and so he started making, we still call it the playhouse, but he built a whole 3-story structure out of what was once the playhouse. And there he is, just, can't stop himself. It's like, but this is what it ended up looking like. Pretty cute, huh? Got a little deck on it. It's like 3 stories. He actually put a washing machine. He plumbed it, and he's got a washing machine in there so he could wash all his grimy clothes, not get the family one all greased up and all that. It was incredible. So we got to go a lot of places, and I keep looking down at Debbie and Claudia and Roland because we did a lot of the stuff together. The families, Roland's cousin, Melvin cousin, Ray Rink cousin, and there's 4 of us. We would all had campers. Dad was a small one. It was an 8-foot one, but he customized it. He actually put a bathroom in there, and he built a bunk bed for my sister. So he customized it, and so it was an incredible thing that he did. But we spent a lot of time going on these little family caravans down south to like Disneyland and Death Valley and all that. And so we traveled a lot. Also, we went to Yosemite, we went to Yellowstone, we went to Jasper, Banff. We were all over the place. And he loved to travel. He even continued all this adventure late in life. So, it's like I could never say, well, once again, just let him live. He decided when he turned 90 that he was going to drive cousin Lisa, back down to Lake Havasu in January. and then drive home by himself. Well, I was like, are you sure? And it's like, I just can't take the time off from work. I said, well, I'll be praying for you. And so I said, well, one thing, you have to let me track your phone so I could see where you're going and all that. So on the way back, he's like, I don't know where he's going. Then all of a sudden, he's like going through San Francisco. Well, San Francisco, yikes. And I could tell he got off track there a little bit. And I'm going, well, and he wasn't answering the phone either. It's like, well, what's going to happen? Well, I guess what happened was he just parked his car at some intersection, got out and said, could you key in this address for me? To this total stranger. I mean, anything could have happened. And they said, oh, sure. It's like, thank you, God. And then later on the same year, he decided he was going to go back to North Dakota and see his relatives. And I'm really glad that he did that, because that was the last time he got to see cousins Eddie and Alan and all of the other Lowell and Dale, all these cousins. But once again, it was terrifying for me, but it's like, it's making him happy. I just let him live, okay? Just go. I was going to say also, Dad loved motorcycles, and so, my clicker stopped. Okay. Is it timing out because I'm talking too long? There we go. So we had a Honda 90 when we were growing up, and I learned how to ride on that. And then also, Dad kept graduating to bigger and better motorcycles, but he got a Kawasaki, and I discovered that he was putting crippled mom, on the back of the motorcycle, and they were riding around the countryside. I'm going, well, that's scary, but that's pretty cool, too, It's like, yeah. They did that for several years, but one time Dad took a corner a little bit too fast. He hit some gravel, and he laid the bike down with Mom on it. And he said, okay, no. I don't want to hurt her any worse than she is, but still, I was like, wow, pretty cool. Dad was also athletic. He had a lot of bowling trophies from when he was in the Army, but also I remember Roland and him and all the cousins playing ping pong. They were good. I mean, this table usually ding, play. No, they stood way back, and they were doing these huge rallies, and I even remember them running around and switching sides while they're doing all this stuff. It's like, man, pretty cool. Dad also helped Mom garden for a long time. He was always so proud about how tall the beans would get and everything. But this is like, sorry, I'm getting a little, well, I actually have my notes here that says talking about Greek thunder, but that's going to come up later on, so I won't even talk about that. He also customized the house so much. So, I mean, this man never sat still. So this is under the house. The house was one floor, but he wanted to put it someplace where Mom's canning could go. So there's a hall closet. You walk down the hallway, and there's a closet there. It's kind of long. He sawed a hole in the floor, and then at some point, he got underneath there, and he dug out this space. He cemented it. He shored it up. He built the shelves. He built the ladder. He had a mechanism that was kind of spring-loaded so the door was never heavy. And when you open the door up, the light would come on. When you close the door, the light would go off. I was showing that to the electrician, and he says, well, it's not done right, but man, that is amazing. He was just, and he also did things like, I got too much stuff. I'm cutting a hole in the ceiling in the garage, and I'm going to hoist up. So he's got like entire table saws and stuff dangling out there that, they're there to just lower them down. Oh, he loved to fix up cars. He loved Corvairs. So I don't think this is the same car, but this was, the sort of car that he would get. And then he would work on it. He would strip it down. He would redo the interior and everything else. This is a little Corvair, a 62 Corvair. The guy had just bought it, and we were saying goodbye to it. But Dad did a really great job. So also for my graduation present, he went out and bought a Corvair. And it's like, really? A Corvair? Because everybody else I know, they probably came from a little bit more well-off families, and we were pretty poor. But they were all getting new cars, Mustangs, and that kind of stuff. He's like, nope, I'm getting a Corvair. Well, I said, okay, could you at least paint it silver? I wanted something a little classier than red. So here's when we got it, and then this picture here is when Dad had started sanding it down in the garage. And he works so hard on that because, to paint it and all that, it has to be the right temperature, it has to be clean and everything else. And this is what he ended up with. It was, yeah, I drove it for many, many, many years. I grew to love that car. It would climb trees if you wanted to, with all the weight in the back. I mean, it would just, over the pass, not a problem. And it was an eye catcher. I mean, everywhere I went, people would say, come into a restaurant, say, who owns the Corvair? Are you going to sell it? Can I be on a list? It was great. So I got to be known pretty well just because of the Corvair. And, I mean, Dad, thank you. I mean, it was a wonderful car. Okay, so things out in the lobby. Now I'm going to try to answer some stuff. I think I already have, because the seat that you saw there with the pulleys on it was for the cable car ride. The round things, the green round things, those are handlebars off of a wheelchair. What he did was he made a pole and he put the clamps on. So, because I have a pea patch in Seattle. I don't have a garden, but they give me a pea patch that's like 10 by 10. So it's small. I just dabble in gardening. But it's like, I want to grow green beans, but I don't have the room for it. He says, just a minute. Let me think. This is what he came up with. So if you can see, there's kind of orange strings in there, but I would just anchor everything, put the pole in, anchor it, and put the strings in, and then I had green beans in the round. It didn't take up room. It was great. And people have said, where did you buy that? I'd like to get some. And I said, my dad made it. Can't have it. All right, the other one. The people probably wonder what that is. You recognize that little thing there? All right, let me see if this video works.
Okay, it's running.
There it goes. Yeah, so they like to dry corn and get the kernels, but it was so hard to get them off, and it's like, yep.
Another one here with,
As long as you don't get your finger in the way there.
now he's got his invention, sticks the top in.
Simple thing. When he first showed it to me, I was like, what do you think that is? And it's like, I don't know, a curler for mom? I mean,
all the kernels.
but yeah, it was a corn sheller.
What we're doing is dried corn and
Pretty
we're
cool.
taking the kernels off.
Well, that's just, one of the things I could transport in here, because he had a lot of things So he loved lawnmowers. I'm sad to say that I have counted 22 lawnmowers on his property. Dwayne and Kathy and Caitlin, they know, because we've been trying to farm these things out, just get rid of them. He loved his lawnmowers, but this was one of his favorites. He called this Bigfoot. And the lawnmower that he had was stripped down like that with the tiny little tires. He wanted it to become this monster truck thing. He put huge tires on it. So he had a lot of problems with it not fitting the seat in between. And I mean, every single thing was just like, this man, I'll think about it. I'll think about it. He would overcome every single obstacle. This I have to find. This was like the initial ride of Bigfoot. Let's watch this. Better put a seatbelt on that. Go, Dad.
Oh, that's good.
And away he goes. Oh, Dad. I love it. This one I think is really ingenious. He called this the thing. Aunt Clara knows this one. It is two different lawnmowers that he can merge into one. And it's weird because the pivot point is in the middle. So the trailer and the engine part are just on two wheels. So they don't support themselves. They need each other. They couple in the middle. But he did such a good job. And he did take it down to Riderwood and has joined the 4th of July parade. And Aunt Clara and Cousin Leona got the perfect parade wave. And I think it lasted until the very end of the parade, then it conked out. But, that was Dad's stuff. Anyways, here's him showing off his creation. See how it pivots in the middle there? And it's got a little dumper, so there we go.
Pretty showy.
Oh, and then Sandy's boy, Nick, he was down in Croatia. He was in Croatia. He sent this text saying, "I found an Uncle Eddie type contraption here. It looks like the thing, doesn't it?" It's like, there's other people like that out there. Oh my goodness. This is one of his other inventions. It's always kind of hard to show when it's in the formation because it doesn't show much, but he had Mom in mind because she was a gardener, but she was, as a cripple and getting older, having a hard time getting down and weeding. It just was hard for her. So Dad says, I got something I'm going to do. He made a frame, and this part here with the seat on it was something that she could actually sit in, and it was spring-loaded, so it would lower her down, and then he had a battery pack on it, so it went pretty slow, but it would be so she could just sit there and pick. Of course, she never did. Oh, I can't do that, Eddie. I'm going to run over things. I'm going to break it. I'm going to say, no. Dad used it a lot. Here's a video of me demonstrating it.
Here it goes. All right. So here's Dad's creation for a garden weeding project. It's called Creeping Thunder. You get in it, grab the handle, sit in the bucket seat, down you go. Put your feet on the pegs, and let's go for a ride.
Blow your horn.
Woo! Top speed.
And you pick weeds as you go along. And when you get done, turn it off. If you're ready to go.
And if you need to back up, back up.
Oh.
No, just the switch.
Oh, sorry, yeah. There we go. Missed a weed or two. Got it. Go forward again a little bit. This is about medium speed. Turn it off. How do I get out of this thing? Watch this. Whoops, I lost my shoe. And we're out. It's almost like a catapult.
Like a catapult. Pretty clever. Creeping Thunder was that, yeah. So this is actually my favorite invention of his. The bottom picture shows what it is now, but so it's been pretty much torn down. But this tractor was built from Dad from the ground up. He took a truck axle, and he made his own frame, and he built his own front axle. He put the engine of a Plymouth in there. He designed the steering mechanisms, everything, and he even built the hood that covers it all. You can actually see the hood back here, but he cut that out of old cars and bent it just right. He called it the Plum Hot Special because it came from a Plymouth, and that's the only thing we could figure out from Plymouth, Plum Hot, and the special. And then he also built a rototiller that's just made out of an old barrel, but this was something that he used a lot. I mean, it's incredible. It was not just a small lawnmower. This was a full-fledged tractor that he built. I was just amazed by that. All right, so I had a fence put in Seattle, and all the excess lumber I just took in the back and put it in the garage. Well, it sat there for years and years and years. I kept thinking I'm going to make something with it. It's like I'm not. And so finally I said, Dad, you want this lumber? Yeah, I'll take it. Well, what does he do? He builds himself a cute little shed, and he ends up painting it. And he uses things like a door handle from a car to actually open the door, and he uses a window from a car to actually put in there. But he just couldn't let anything sit. He had to make something out of it. Now, this is where it gets a little scary. I term this why men die young sort of thing, because some of the things he did was like, this is a scaffolding that he made, and it has wheels on it so he could transport it any place he wants. But, it doesn't look all that safe. But, still Michael Dum-Dum, he gets up there and he picks apples and stuff with it, and it was pretty good. But this is even after Dad fell off the roof. Watch this.
Mark, set, go. All right, he's already going. Here's Dad climbing his scaffolding, showing off, but at the same time, I think that he's just proven that he can climb.
Oh, got to show off a little bit. had a
He's just
handrail there so he
proving that
didn't fall
can
off.
get up onto the roof without any problems, even though everybody fusses at him. All right, he's at stage 2, and now he's going for touch the doggy. There you go. You gonna come down now too?
Piece of cake.
Piece of cake. All right, this is a part where we have to worry about him climbing down backwards onto a little stool.
And that's where it ends. So I don't know if I went and ran for him or not, but it's like, he got down okay, but still. See, what a hard-headed man. But I let him live. I mean, that's all I could do. So when he was doing the playhouse, he was painting it. You know, the first picture doesn't look too bad, but when you look at the second one, how high up he was, Mom would never come out of the house when he was doing this, because, I mean, she just, I want to see it at all, but that's what he did. He cut down a lot of trees, too, and there would be times like, Dad, can I be home when you do this? And so he would always abide by that. I mean, that's all I asked, but this is one where this is like the 4th video I did, but we finally got it down here. He'd been climbing around making undercuts and stuff on top of the roof. You can see the ladder there.
Oh, so close.
Come on, you can do it, Dad. Get that tractor going.
Yeah, it's making cracking noises. It was pretty up.
It's going to happen. All right, here we go.
Pull, yeah!
Oh, we're so close.
Up.
Now go. Go.
Well, you didn't hit your shed. He was worried about hitting this car shed there.
Yeah. He was so worried about hitting the shed, but he was like, oh, Dad. Check this out. The canner stopped sealing stuff. Rather than just buy a new one, he clams. And I was like, I am not going to hover around this kitchen at all. Oh. Yeah, you know, see what I had to endure? Oh, anyways, so there was several things on the picture out there were my favorite memories of Dad, and a lot of them I touched on, but some of them I think are so tender. When I was in the hospital, when he would say goodbye, and I hated to see him go goodbye, but he would walk to the end to the room at the door, and he'd say bye-bye, and then he'd walk a little bit further, and he'd say bye-bye, and there was just a way that he could navigate past the nurse's station to the elevator, and he'd just keep popping out saying bye-bye, bye-bye, and I loved that. So when he got admitted to the Regency and all that, there for a time when he was still fairly conscious, that's what I would do with him, and I know that it warmed his heart. Because he remembered. Also, it wasn't on that list there, but for decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, Mom and Dad and I would talk for an hour on the phone every Friday night. We didn't ever miss, unless, I say, well, I can't do it, let's do it Thursday night or something like that, but we talked every week for hours sometimes. And then I would also go home and spend the weekend with them once a month, and that's just something I've done. Because my parents were good people. I didn't see eye to eye with them all the time, but I did spend a weekend with them every month. And that even continued on with Dad. And my goodness, we bonded so much over those weekends. I'm just going to miss that. That means that was probably the biggest hit that I took, was that Friday night Dad wasn't there for me anymore. But just to bounce back a little bit, he mispronounced everything because the English, like I said, was not his strong suit. And so a lot of times he would mispronounce everything. And after a while, we'd find ourselves just saying the same thing too. And then we'd laugh because it's like, Dad. But nobody else could understand us except Dad. And then, he has the gift of talking and talking and talking. Mom would be so frustrated because he would never come to eat. He would never do anything because he was always talking with everybody. But it was this gift of gab that made him so enduring. And also, he could nap anywhere. And that was another thing that I figured probably got him through all the long days. It was just being able to nap when the truck was being loaded, when he was on a ferry boat someplace. He just would give these little power naps all the time. Okay, so bear with me now because I'm sure I'll get emotional, but I do have to talk about his decline because it has such a special ending for me. So 4th of July weekend, I went home to see him, and he just said, I'm not just feeling right, so you go to church without me and all that. So I did, and he had been out actually a few weeks earlier to get some firewood for me. I had a tree that fell down in front of the house, and so I made all this firewood and cut it into length and all that. I said, come and get your firewood. Well, he did with Angie, and then he was walking with a walker, and I go, wow, with a cane. And I said, Dad, are you okay? He says, well, my balance is a little off, but I'm okay. And he never complained about anything. He said, I'll get better. Well, anyways, Sunday morning I was sleeping, and I heard a crash. And I thought, oh boy, I better go check that out. Well, I found Dad face down in the living room, and some of the pictures you can see, he's actually already has some, kind of like rashes on the side of his face. He said, oh, I've got some, skin condition going on. Then later on at some point he says, oh no, actually I've been falling down more. I said, oh boy. So anyways, on Sunday, it took a lot of work to get him set up. I actually pulled him across the room and got him partway into the recliner that kind of sets you up. And I got him back upright again. Then he said, well, let's go out and do some work. And I said, yes. So we went out, and he was trying so hard to get everything set up so he could do more firewood splitting and stuff. But when he tried to walk up, the incline is a 2 feet little knoll to get back to the house again. Half hour. This was a half hour. And I said, Dad, do you want me to help you? No, I can do it. He said, I need some Geritol is what I need. So I said, okay, I'll go order you some Geritol. But I made us a bowl of soup that day, and he said, well, I got to go to the bathroom, and at some point he says, I need your help, Mike, and he had collapsed. I couldn't get him up, and I said, okay, Dad, this is it. I called the paramedics, and they took him to Monroe, and for whatever reason, that first week is probably when I did most of my grieving for the man, because I really thought he was gone. He made no sense. He was just gone, and I had a horrible time with it. But he kind of rebounded, so they put him into Regency Care Center, and he was there for about 2 weeks. Not really making much progress, but he says, the doctor says I can go home tomorrow. And I say, well, as soon as you can show that you can walk around. He says, I'll do fine. That was that just let me live thing going on. I said, Dad, I can't do that. That's to me like assisting suicide or something. You can't do that. Well, he kind of relapsed and they had to put him back in the hospital. They thought he had pneumonia and all that. And then once he got released there, they went back to Regency again. And once again, he just had no place. He wasn't making any progress. But at the same time, he was running out of money. Medicare was running out of money for him. And so it's like, wow, they're going to charge you $13,000 a month, Dad. I got to find you someplace else to go. But there was no other place to go. So I just didn't know what to do. And then he actually got admitted back to Kirkland this time because they thought his kidney functions were really looking bad. And that's when we started talking more about hospice. And tough decisions. But it's like, yeah, I think we need to look at that. So that's pretty much where we ended up. For months, he was a flight risk for a lot of times because he was convinced that he could go home and make firewood, and anytime he got a chance, he was just aiming for the door. And it's like, oh, Dad, you can't. But I don't have this written down, but I tell, I think, a cute little story. I think Kathy and Dwayne have heard this one, but you don't know what to expect with people in in that situation, and sometimes they can be so coherent one day and the next day they're not. Anyways, when Dad and I used to talk on the phone in the evenings, he said, well, how's your Aunt Juanita doing? And I said, oh, Dad. I mean, I've never been one to lie. I said, Dad, she passed away a year or two ago. Well, when you see her, tell her hi. I mean, he's like, okay, that's fine. I mean, I'll just play along with that. I can, yeah, okay, I'll tell her, Dad. I will definitely do that. So, knowing that he thought she was still alive, I thought, well, okay, great. So I went to see him one Sabbath, and when I come into the room, he said, you got to help your mother. She's out in the parking lot, and she's lost. And I'm going, well, I'm not going to say, Dad, she's gone. You know, I was like, I don't want to upset him at all. But then I ran outside, and I said to the nurse, I was like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know how to play along. Here, I'm kind of like been this actor all my life, but it's like, I don't know what to do. And she says, well, just play along best you can and just give him assurance that she's okay. And I thought, oh, she was always so close with Aunt Juanita, so I'll go back in and I'll just say, Dad, she's fine. She's visiting Aunt Juanita. And he looks at me and she says, Juanita's dead. Why did you remember that right now? I wasn't going to lie to my dad, and I just lied, and I just like, you shot me down. You can't win. Oh. It was horrible. But anyways, thanks for laughing at that, because I thought it was cute, but at the same time, it's like, ugh. It was tough. It was really tough trying to play along with all this stuff. But, eventually his voice gave out. He was sleeping more. It was just harder to see, find him when he was awake and all that. But I know that Walt Perham is here. There was it's like the 3rd of January, just before his birthday, we went and saw him on the weekend. And he was sitting by the nurse's station, and he was actually really, really aware and cognizant, and we had a nice visit. And that was like the last time I really saw him awake and all that. After that, I was always in bed. Angie and I would visit together because we felt like there was comfort in having a second person there, because we didn't know what he was saying, and it felt like it was nice to have a second set of ears to hear everything. But we would sometimes be able to kind of like tickle him a little bit and get him to like smile, and it's like, oh, there's Dad. I mean, he's not able to open his eyes, but he's still there. But just about the week before he passed away, I stopped by, because I've been spending a lot of time at his house trying to get it ready to sell. I've got a lot of things to clean up and all that. But I stopped by Thursday morning, and I found Dad. He was just out. Oh, these are the happier times. I didn't been forgetting to promote my stuff. The one on the right is that last time I saw him with Walt and Patty, his wife, and Al and Chris showed up that day. And I think Elroy did with Ruby. It was a nice visit. But this one here, I even look a little red in my eyes, because I couldn't get him to respond. He was gone. He was just gone. And I thought, I'm never going to get to see my dad anymore. So after this picture, I said, well, Dad, I talked with him 20 minutes, just talked about life and everything else. And I thought, I'm going to go now. I'll see you again soon, but I will stop by. And I've just divine guidance said, Michael, hold your dad. So I put my hand underneath him. I held him tight, kissed his forehead. And then I prayed like I've never prayed before. I prayed for him. I prayed for me. I prayed for us. And when I let go of him, stood back, his eyes popped open, and he looked me right in the eye. And we connected for 5 seconds before he finally closed up again. But that was the best gift that man could have ever given me. He saw me. He heard me. Of course, I'm going to miss all of our talks and all the things we did. Like I said, he was my best buddy. He was my pal. He ceased being my father a long time ago because he didn't discipline, but we just became best buddies. I miss all that, but I know he's in a better place, and I will see him again. That's right. And I want to just close with this picture because it's beautiful. We spent a lovely weekend, a day up at Mount Baker, and just brings peace to my soul. Anyways, thank you for listening to my long tale about my wonderful dad. And now I realize that I have to sing a duet. So who put this program together anyways? Anyways, the song that I'm going to sing, I asked Trish to sing it with me because Dad and I used to sing it a lot. We sang it in Bridges Ministries. We sang it all over the place. It's a beautiful song called Consider the Lilies. And thank you. And he always wanted to sing it with me one more time, but there was a few times when we actually said, okay, we'll sing it this Sabbath. But when I'd show up, his voice would not be behaving. And I said, well, maybe next time. But we never got to sing it again. All right. Anyways, enjoy.
Kisses the flowers each morning with dew, but he's not too busy to care about you. We have a heavenly Father
full of mercy and a heart full of love.
He really cares when your head is bowed low. Consider the lilies, and then you will know. Consider the lilies.
Mike, no one could talk about your dad like you did. And that was a gift to all of us for you to share about your dad like that. You honored him, and you lifted our eyes to hope. And that's why we're here. We're here to stand in solidarity with Mike and his family, that this is not the end of Eddie's story. He is resting. He's sleeping. He's waiting for Jesus to wake him up. The devil can never tempt him again. He is beyond the reach of the accuser, the tempter. And I want to also express my respect and appreciation for Mike for how you took care of your father. And I think of Jesus on the cross with a nail through his ankles. And to get every breath, he had to push down on those ankles to get breath. But he used that painful breath to arrange care for his mom. So what you did for your dad is sacred. I love how Mike told me that he would come to take care of his dad, and there was work to be done, chores, and his dad would say, "Can we just sit and talk?" And the wonderful conversations that they had. Mike tells me that Eddie loved hearing him play the piano. And there was a certain song when he was a boy. He offered Mike $20 if he would learn it and play it for church. So Mike learned it and played it for church, and then he kind of went like this with his dad and told him $20, and he got the $20. I found it meaningful that even though Eddie's first language was German, he didn't teach the children because he didn't want Joyce to feel excluded or left out. That's how precious she was to him. I didn't know about the motorcycle. I was his pastor for years. I didn't know about the motorcycle. I thought that was great. Eddie was a sharp dresser. His hair was always perfectly in place. When my little girl was born while we were here in Monroe, and my father-in-law got her a wagon. And it was a beautiful wagon. It was plastic, but it was sturdy. But the only problem was it had these plastic tires. And Eddie just could not have that. He said, "You need pneumatic tires with this." And so he went and found really good pneumatic tires that would fit on that wagon. 30 years ago, we still have the wagon with the pneumatic tires. And when we would be pulling her around in the wagon, Eddie would come up and "Oh yeah, these are good tires. This will be." I remember there was a very nice young lady who went to the church here who happened to have some philosophical concerns about logging. Kind of a more of an environmental point of view. And I remember Eddie and Roland loved to talk with her. And the minute there'd be a church social and she would come, Eddie and Roland would look at each other and they'd go over and talk to her. And they both would have this big smile and she would have a big smile, and they'd be going back and forth talking about logging. And I actually really enjoyed watching it. It was really, really fun. It touches me how much pain Eddie dealt with in his life, as Mike told us the story. And yet to know Eddie, you wouldn't know that because he was always so cheerful. And I love wanting to get back and do the firewood, Mike. That is just amazing. Revelation 21, 3 and 4. This is what Eddie believed in. This is what he looked forward to. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes." That's pretty personal attention from Jesus. I have some tears that I'm going to need him to wipe. There will be no more death. In fact, when I see some of you in heaven, you'll probably hear me say, "We will never attend a funeral again." No more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Revelation 7, verse 9, "And I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, language, and people, standing before the throne and the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands, and they cried out in a loud voice, 'Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb.' Then one of the elders asked me, 'These in white robes, who are they? Where did they come from?'" Can you picture Eddie standing with that vast throng in a white robe, his hair perfectly coiffed, a huge smile on his face, holding hands with his beloved Joy? He always called her Joy when I ever heard it, holding hands with his beloved Joy. Then one of the elders asked me, "These in white robes, who are they and where did they come from?" And I answered, "Sir, you know." And he said, "These are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb." This life is really hard. There's a lot of difficult things, and I appreciate, Mike, you sharing some of the challenges, the difficult things. And it makes me respect and value Eddie even more because of his faith and his courage and his cheerfulness. One of the things that Mike told me near the end was there was a time where his dad was not feeling good. And Mike said he didn't complain, but there was one time he heard his dad say, "I hate this." He couldn't be home. He couldn't be doing what he wanted to do. He wasn't feeling good, and he said, "I hate this." And when I think about that, it makes me think of when Jesus wakes him up, and there is his beloved Joy to be with him again, and there's Jesus, and he's looking around for all of us. He will no longer be saying, "I hate this." Can you picture the smile on his face? When what we long for is no longer a dream, it's here. It's present. And it will be the vacation you never go home from. And the people you love will never get old and never leave. I think we'll hear Eddie say, "I love this." Job 19:25. This is what Eddie believed. He built his life on this. "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him. With my own eyes, I and not another. How my heart yearns within me." I was asked to do a memorial service for a family. And the father, near the end, he said to his son, he said, I want you there with me in heaven, son. Will you promise me you'll be there? And the son was on his own journey. But he told me, he said, what are you going to say to your dad? And so with tears coming down his face, he said, Dad, I promise you, I promise I'll be there. And he meant it. And then he proceeded to tell me what he needed to stop doing to be there. And he told me what he had to do to be there. And I told him, no, that's not the right approach, because that approach, you're making yourself your own savior, that you have to accrue enough credits to pass to get into heaven. The scripture says, he who has the Son has life. It's a relationship with Jesus. So I said, get to know Jesus. Become friends with Jesus. Spend time with Jesus. Open your heart to Jesus. And that is how you'll get to see your dad again. And that's how you'll keep your promise to your dad. I want to ask you a couple questions. Based on what Eddie believed, what is the next thing Eddie will hear? I want you to just think about it. What is the next thing he'll hear? What is the next thing that Eddie will see? When he awakes, what is he going to be looking for? And how glad will Eddie be that he put his trust in Jesus? I was driving with my family. It was late at night. My son was 4. My wife's grandmother was sitting beside me. My kids called her Nana. She was sitting beside me in the front seat. My wife, my 7-year-old daughter, my 4-year-old son are asleep in the back of the van. I kept the temperature warm enough where they were comfortable, but not so warm that I would fall asleep. And I'm driving late at night to get home. And Nana, sitting beside me, kept yawning. She was getting tired, but she didn't want to fall asleep in the minivan. So she'd yawn, and then she'd say, I don't want to fall asleep. Oh, I don't want to fall asleep. And she woke up my son, 4 years old. And he heard her say, I don't want to fall asleep. And I heard his little sleepy voice. And he said, Nana, it's okay to fall asleep. Because when you get home, Daddy will carry you inside. And when you wake up, you'll be home. Eddie didn't want to fall asleep. We didn't want him to. But it's okay, Eddie, to fall asleep. And now Jesus carries you. And when you wake up, you'll be home. Now is an opportunity if you have a story, a memory that you want to share. We have some microphones. And if you will just raise your hand, and I'll acknowledge you, and then you can share. And if you don't mind, because this is being live streamed, if you don't mind saying who you are. So are there any, please? right here. Evan, right there. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Charlie Williamson. I'm with Adventist Prison Ministries, and Eddie and Joyce and Mike all served in that ministry for years and years. Mike did music. Joyce did teaching and a lot of different things, and Eddie loved to bring his harmonica. He loved that harmonica, and he was just as much of a joy to the guys up at Monroe Prison for 25 years or more. It was probably over 25 years. And I loved him dearly, and the guys loved him. And Joyce, over a period of years, warmed up enough to where I could actually give her a hug, because she was a little touchy about hugs. I think that's being polite, but finally, I can't tell you how joyful it was when I could give her just a half a hug and she didn't try to squirm away. But I love that. I love that Bahnmiller family, because they're so full of Jesus and so full of the Spirit. Yeah. It was a joy to minister with them for all those years. And I hate to see Eddie go, but I'm going to see him again in heaven, and I'll love it. I'll love every minute of it. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm Floyd Marshall. I'm the coordinator of prison ministry for the Washington Conference. I obviously met Eddie and Joyce at the prison. And Mike, thanks for that great sketch you gave today. I learned something. I never knew that English was not his first language. It's the first time I discovered that today. And so I met both of them there. I missed Joyce with her nice accent. And Eddie was, both of them were, as Charlie said, were very involved in prison ministry. Eddie, when you get there, he would just say, Pastor Floyd, it's good to see you. And then he would greet my wife. But he was committed. He was very, very, he wanted to always be there to share, even although he may not be doing anything, for his presence to make an impact on these men. And both of them, both Joyce and Eddie, they always look forward to Michael joining us. When Michael joined us, they were so happy. So we will miss Eddie, but I do know from all that we have heard and my personal relationship with him. And by the way, he always used to love to tell us about his garden. Mm-hmm. He always used to love to tell us about his garden and what. And we got some of his products from time to time. So we'll miss Eddie. But I am sure that when Jesus Christ comes, that great getting up morning, Eddie is going to be there, and also Joyce.
Amen.
Thank you, Floyd. Walt.
My name is Walt Perham, and I got to know Eddie and Joyce and Michael in the prison, and I really enjoyed them and got to know them very well there. And once COVID hit, we couldn't go into the prison, but Eddie would call me, or I would call Eddie, and I'd always say, Eddie, tell me a good story. And he would always tell me, and we'd be on the phone for an hour or so. Yeah. And I really appreciate the time that Patty and I went up to see Eddie at Regency, and Michael was there. That's a special time I'll never forget.
Thank you.
My name is Ramona Blackburn, and one thing that Eddie did for me, my husband passed away, and his memorial service was Sabbath. Joyce passed away Friday, the day before my husband's memorial, but Eddie came. And his grief was so new, but it really touched me that he came to support me when I had lost my love. I'll never forget it.
My name is Barbara Heathcock, and I'm a member of Monroe Church and been a friend of Bahnmiller's family for many, many years through the school and through the church. And it's just been a wonderful experience to be here today to listen to these memories and things about Eddie. And appreciate both Joy and Eddie and Mike and Tracy through the years. But I just wanted to add a little smiley face to it too, and that is he was always, you mentioned, Mike, about tickling and teasing, and he was great at that. And but he was very kind, he was very thoughtful, and he had a chance, not a chance, but I was at home and the telephone rang, and it was my birthday. And the phone rang, and I said, hello, and I got, guess what I got? Happy Birthday on the Harmonica by Eddie Bahnmiller. So those are the fun things to remember. And again, what you said, we have this to look forward to, that we can get together and talk about these things not too long from now, thank God.
Thank you, Barb.
I'm Candy Mellon. Used to be Master John. I've known Eddie since I was probably 6 years old. We spent many in-gathering nights singing Christmas carols together because he loved to sing. But the story I wanted to tell, Jim and I went to visit him at Regency soon after he got there. Gina went with us, and he said to us, I've been kind of combing my hair over for a few years. He said, but don't tell anybody I'm bald. And I tried to get the nurses to fix my hair. And I said, Eddie, tomorrow morning you tell them, before anything, you fix my hair. And so he laughed, and it was a nice memory of our last time to visit him.
Thank you, Candy.
My name is Randall, and I've known Eddie through prison ministry, both him and Joyce. And I know Mike. And all the time that they would come in to the prison, we also did the nursing homes together, so we had a blessed time. But Mike, thank you for sharing your family with us. And also, I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a particular day I wound up making a potluck meal. It was called Bavarian potatoes. And when I made it, I changed some stuff, and I put a few extra ingredients in it. So Eddie kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and he's like, hey, this is good. This is really good. And here's Mike kind of, yeah, seconds, come on, seconds. Joyce heard it, and she says, I'm never going to make it again. It's your turn. You make it.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Juanita Waters Tupper. I went to school with Eddie at Auburn Academy. I remember he was so cute. He had these big dimples and dark curly hair. I think a lot of the girls had a crush on him. But we kind of lost track over the years, but 3 years ago, actually 5 years ago, we moved back to this area. And when we lived in Sultan for a couple years. And I remember having Eddie come over. I think he came for Thanksgiving dinner and or Christmas dinner. I don't know where Mike was, but I remember we had a little Christmas thing and we opened gifts, and he felt bad because he didn't have a gift, but I gave him some little crocheted thingamajig, I think. And anyway, it was nice to reconnect with him.
Thank you, Juanita. Right up in the front, Evan.
Hi, my name is Clara Davis, and I'm Eddie's sister. And I'm going to take us back to North Dakota, which is a paradise place, right, Mike? Yeah. Well, he was, even back then, he was in the invention mode because we lived at the bottom of this big hill. I mean, it was almost a mountain. But anyway, in the wintertime, he decided he was going to make himself some skis. So I don't remember what he made them out of, but he went up that hill, put them on his feet. He'd go about 5 feet and he'd smash into the snow, right? And he'd get up and he'd do it again. Mom and I don't know where Dad was, but Mom and I stood at the kitchen window and just laughed and laughed and laughed. And that was one of the things. And then once a week we got to go to town because we milked cows, so we'd have cream to take in and eggs. And that was our big night because we got a nickel to go spend on something. So anyway, there was animals to be put to bed before we left. And our little sheep were the best ones to watch. He would chase them and they would all over the place, you know. And Mom and I again, I don't know where Dad was again, but we laughed so hard at him. And there was other things that he did. He unhooked the gate at into the house, not the house door, but the gate. And I was coming with a bucket full of eggs. Well, when I went to open the gate, it fell, and I fell with it and the eggs. And I said, I don't remember it, but he did. And I said, did I cry? And he says, oh yeah, and I got a whooping.
Ben.
Eddie was always so special to me because not only, like I said in the welcome, because we had a lot of common interests. I had a diesel that I got, and it was a large part because of Roland and Eddie both had diesels, and I always wanted to have a diesel too. And I remember I hopped that truck up, and I went over there, and I always talked about giving him a ride, and I gave him a ride in it, and he's like, wow. And I cranked it up to max tune and took it out, and he's like, boy, this really gets it. And just had so much fun with him. But the reason why Eddie was so special to me, and Roland's in the same camp. The cousins, those two men, the reason they're so special to me is because not only did we have a lot of fun together, I got to drive the thing, by the way, at a church work bee and dumped it. We were dumping yard clippings, and he let me drive it a bunch of times out at the work bee, and I had so much fun with that thing. But the reason why he was so special is because he was always there. The consistency of presence, just him always being here. And him and Roland are two men that I admire so much because from their generation, they're men that I could tell them I love them and they would say, I love you back. And that's a rare thing. That's a rare thing to have men in your life that are men that you look up to, that are mentors in your life, outside of your family, that you know when they tell you they love you, they mean it. And so when I saw Eddie at Regency, and I saw Mike out in the parking lot with Pee Wee, when I saw him there, I was like, oh God, barring a miracle, this is the last time I'm going to see him. And I've been in there with Sunshine Band, and we got to sing so many songs, and I love singing songs with Eddie. Eddie always had such a beautiful voice. And to see that full circle, like you talked about, Mike, it was hard for me. It was hard for me to see him there because I know that he didn't want to be there as someone receiving care. He was always the giver, and he was always the one giving hope and giving love and giving encouragement. And I gave him a big hug, and I told him I loved him, and I said, let's get you out of here. And he's like, let's go. And I would love to have been able to get him out of there. I know Mike would have loved to too, but I can't wait for that time when it's not going to be that way anymore. So, man, love that man so much. I'm so grateful for him.
Thank you, Ben. Gina.
I'm Gina Mellon, and I'm Gina Mellon, and I've gone to Monroe forever, and so I've known Eddie pretty much my whole life. Just a couple quick things. I visited with my parents at the nursing home, and one of the things he said is, when I get out of here, I'm going to definitely join a gym. I think I need to start working out again. And I'm like, yeah, I love that. I'm going to go work out with you. It was just, I love him. He's fabulous. Like Ben said, he's probably one of my favorite human beings. I was one of the kids he would tell the stories to about his finger, and I never actually knew what happened until just now, because I think I heard 12 different versions of the story. And I remember I had a little book, and I drew pictures, and I would write stories about the stories he would tell me. This is Ed Bahnmiller, and these are the stories, and I gave it to him probably 15 years ago. But just the impression that he made on me was, and he was never, he was fun and funny, and he wasn't too busy for us to spend time with us and be silly, and that, made an impression.
Thank you, Gina.
My name is Elroy Oster, and I had the pleasure of working with Ed and I've known him since I was 18 years old. But after he retired from Racelers, he came to work for the same company I worked for. He drove truck, moved equipment, and always trying to figure a way to fix something to make it work a little easier. I had to tell my crew all the time, when Ed comes to the site, keep him off the truck. He would always want to get up and help the guys in the load on the truck. I said, he's in his 80s, guys. Don't let him on the truck. I know you can't keep him in the truck, but keep him on the ground, please. Ed was a really hard worker and a great friend. I'll miss him.
Thank you, Elroy.
So Eddie is my uncle, and my name is Sandy, and so Mike and I we're pretty much the same age, and we kind of had that kindred spirit going on, even though we had a distance between us, so we didn't get to go to Grandma and Grandpa Bahnmiller's on the farm that often. But when we did, usually it was for, maybe a week or so. But anyway, as far as Uncle Eddie, he, I don't know how it came about, but I think he took turns with my brothers and I, and we would go with him on the logging truck. And so, I was very young, probably 6 years old. They had to lift me up on the logging truck, and if I was older, I probably would have said no, because I just remember this being like one of those traumatic times of my life. It was fun, being in the truck with him, but by the time we got up the mountain, I just remember as a little kid, it was just climbing up this mountain, and I'm just looking down the side because it was just this drop off. And I just thought, as being a little child, you don't, obviously now I think back and I go, how could he do that for so many years? But then I just remember my hands were all clammy, and I was just holding on to the, to the door and everything. And to this day, I remember him looking over at me, especially when he was turning the truck around precariously, up on one of these roads, and him looking over at me and just grinning, like, that was just Uncle Eddie, and there were just many times like that. I just loved that smile in his eyes and his joyful grin.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yes, I'm Jean Ludwig. And Eddie and I became friends at church, and I'd always sit by him because he was sitting alone, and so I started sitting with him. And we always, in our church service, we always sing, "God be with you till we meet again," at the end. And I'd turn around and I'd look at him, and like we're singing it to each other, and it's really wonderful. And I miss him at church. And God be with him till we meet again.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Reisler. I worked with Ed in the woods, and we better tell a couple logging stories about Ed.
That would be appropriate.
Yes. I basically met Ed when I was a kid, just hanging out in the logging shop. And then in high school, Dad gave me the job of a grease monkey, which is they maintain the log trucks, grease them at night. And I remember getting Ed's truck. And I go, man, this is the cleanest, nicest logging truck in the entire fleet. He kept that thing polished. It was always clean, never muddy. You get in the cab, it looked like it was brand new, even after he drove it 10 plus years. And I remember one time, like Mike was saying, he could be stern. He got really stern with me one day. We wore coveralls, and we'd get in these trucks and then park them back in the line so they were ready for them guys the next morning. And we'd just jump in them trucks in our greasy coveralls, and I think I got grease on Ed's steering wheel and maybe his shifter. And the next day he saw me, he goes, Jeff, you're doing a great job, but take your coveralls off and don't get dirt and grease in my truck. So then a few years later, I kind of graduated up into the rigging crew, and then I was running shovel, loading trucks. And Ed was our number one truck driver, and I'd save all the biggest logs for Ed, and he kind of got a kick out of that. I go, Ed, you ready for a 3-log load? And he goes, you bet. And he was always in a great mood, happy guy, and his CB handle was Fireball. And, you know, back in the day, all communication was with CBs. So you'd hear the guys talking, you know, and said, Fireball, I'm at mile 5 coming in loaded. And Ed always hustled. He was a really professional guy. He could run any equipment in the woods. And, you know, he drove fast, but he was very safe. Never an incident or any problems with Ed at all. And I'm going to miss him. He was a great friend.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ted. I'm part of the prison ministry that him and Joyce and Lloyd and Mike and all of them was in. And while I was up there, I had a chance to meet Ed and Joyce. And Joyce was she was a fireball. And I had a chance, and anything that I wanted, I wouldn't go to Ed, I'd go to Joyce, and I can get. I think the week that Joyce passed, I had a chance to say some words before she passed, and I really missed them. But I had heard the story from Mike about the $20 playing the piano. And I played the piano, so sometimes they would have me sing or play the piano when Mike wasn't there. And I thought to myself, if Mike could get $20, maybe I could get $20. And I told Ed, I said, Ed, is your $20 still available? And we kind of laughed through that time and had a chance to meet him. I never did get the $20, but I'll see him. I got more than the $20. I got a good friend, and I wouldn't have missed this in the world. I traveled many miles, but I was here. I wouldn't miss this time because he was truly a friend, and we'll be praying for the family.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy. I am married to Eddie's nephew, Luke. And the first time I met Eddie, we went out to the house to see him and Joyce, and I'll never forget because we came in and he introduced me, and Eddie was like, oh, I've got to give the pretty ladies a hug. And he gave me this big hug, and it was so sweet. And I remember because he told Joyce that, like, I got to give these pretty ladies a hug. And he gives me a hug, and Joyce is like, oh yeah, they all want you. You know, like just kind of always going back and forth. And I remember after Joyce passed, we came to this church to celebrate her life. And I remember Luke talking about how much he loved his aunt and his uncle. And we walked in, and the first thing, Luke goes running up with his arms open to give his uncle a hug. And Eddie looked at him, opened his arms, and then pushed him aside and went, "The pretty ladies first." And he gave me a hug. And I'll never forget that, because it always, anytime I saw him, he always wanted to give me a hug and say, you know, how happy he was to see me, and just how he, you know, marrying into the Bahnmiller family. I'm sure all of the people who have married into the Bahnmiller family can also attest that it's a big family, and there's a whole book for the Bahnmiller Madkey family. So marrying in, you're kind of just like a little like awestruck as you come into it. But that was the thing, is Claudia and Clara and Eddie all were so welcoming and made you feel like you're part of the family right away. So yeah, I'm gonna miss Eddie.
Thank you.
My name is Caitlin. I have been blessed to know, I think we might be the only ones that call him Ed. Since I was 8 years old, my parents bought the property next door, which was his parents' place. And I lived there my whole life, moved away for 2 years and bought the house next to him. So I have been seeing many, many things from Ed over the years. A lot goes along with Michael's stories of him in his garden, working on his tractors, the dairy farm's tractors. Getting my first car, well, it was a truck, and he wanted to race me down the driveway on one of the lawnmowers. Or seeing him bring lawnmowers home, and I'm going, "Really, you need more?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course I do. I'm gonna do this and that." But with that, we had some of the hard times. Losing joy and just seeing the different times of life, being back. My daughters love Ed when they could go out and go, "What's he doing? What's he working on?" And they'd go visit him and hide behind him, and he always wanted to play and talk with them. I think the hardest part is him not being there. Many of you have talked about his constant presence and being here at church, or when you need a friend or whatever else. I get to look from my kitchen window and see what he was doing, whether he was on that roof he wasn't supposed to be on, or doing the things I knew Michael was coming to do with him this weekend. Sometimes I'd rat on him a little bit out of love. But that's been the hardest moment. He would flag you down in the driveway just to see what you were doing, or come over and see what project you were working on. Or sometimes I'd just go hang out to hear what he was about his day. So that's been the hardest part for our family, is not seeing him every day.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Val McCallings from the Startup Church. I haven't been there very long lately because I'm in a wheelchair and I'm in an adult care facility. So this is the first time I've been out to do much. So this is really special.
Glad you're
But
here.
I just want to say that Eddie was there, and he was in the same Sabbath school class as I, and he would come out and push me in there in the wheelchair, and afterwards he would push me back, and I would hold his Bible in my lap, and that went on for several weeks until he was gone from the church. So I appreciated him. That shows his love to everybody else.
Thank you, Val.
I wanted to share something that Velma did not share about Eddie. So I'm a nurse. I've pushed a lot of wheelchairs, and I would offer sometimes to help to get Velma in there. Eddie would never let me because I did not have a CDL. So it was very important. You could only push the wheelchair if you had a CDL. RN didn't count. While we're talking stories about Eddie, Eddie never told me he hated the nursing home, but I'm not surprised. Eddie was very, very sweet. But it was really funny. One day I was there to visit him on Sabbath afternoon. Kent and I had gone. And I have to share the story because it was funny. Eddie had a humor wherever he went. He was sitting there out there by the nurse's station. We know why he was there, because he was a fall risk. So they kept him out there under watch. Next to him was a lady in a chair. She was several weeks always in her place. Eddie was in his place. Then there was another lady. Well, the one on his left was sitting there. She was crashed out, sleeping, head down, sleeping. And Eddie sat there, quietly, said no word. He reached his hand over and touched the back of her hand, pulls it back and says, "She's still warm." And then he laughed. I laughed too. Absolutely funny. So you gotta love Eddie. The humor never stopped.
Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Wendy, and I just want to say that I used to love the way Eddie loved his ducktail. And the ducktail style on men became very popular during the 50s, halfway through the 60s before long hair hit. Come to church every day, and he'd turn around and proudly show me that ducktail. It was always perfect. After he took that fall off the ladder, and my husband and I went and saw him a few times in Harborview, and I thought, how is this going to play out? And I asked him about his ducktail. He said, "Oh no, my ducktail will be back." And do you know what? When I saw Eddie at church again, the ducktail was exactly as it should be.
Thank you.
My name is Alvaro Arjona. I have a great memories from Ed every Saturday coming to the church. I love him because he was very genuine, you know, like Mike say, genuine person. He did affection, you know, for me and my family. I remember that before I was going to the doors at the church, he always was there hosting, you know. And I said, I wanted to challenge him, you know, and because the way his personality is, you know. And I came into the doors and say, "Hey Ed, ¿cómo estás?" and then he challenged me also back. And he said, "Danke, how are you doing something like that in German?" And then I laughed, he laughed, and he said, "Be happy." I always remember when he said to me, "Be happy." So that's my memory, you know, from that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike.
I'm Mike Newharth. My brother and I, about 6-7 years ago, we were looking for a driver to do pickup and deliveries for us in the summer. Well, I had a 2015 Dodge Ram pickup with 420 horsepower under the hood. And Dan says, "You think we should offer Eddie a job?" And I says, "I don't know. You think we can keep tires on it?" And so I said, "Hey, why don't you come in here? We'll talk about this, see if you want to drive for us." He says, "What do you got?" I says, "I got a half-ton Ram with a Hemi, high horse Hemi. I'll come right in." So he comes in, and I felt so good. He was going to be happy to drive my powerful pickup. Well, then he comes up and he opens the door. And he lowers his voice and he says, "We got to talk." And I said, "What's the matter?" "It's a pigsty." I'm embarrassed. Here's this guy about 85 years old telling me that I've got a piece of junk pickup. Jeff, you know what I'm talking about. And I look in the pickup and I says, "Well, what's wrong with it?" He says, "I can't work in here." He says, "Can I take it home and wash it?" I said, "Okay." "Are you going to pay me to do it?" I said, "No." "Well, I'm going to take it home and wash it up anyway." So he brings it back. About 6 hours later, here's this box in the passenger seat with a bunch of stuff in it. And he says, I don't know what anybody would need that stuff for to drive this truck with, but it was in this truck. You can do whatever you want with it. But now my office is clean.
Dan.
So Dad didn't speak German at home for the same reason. But I took some German in college. So when I met Eddie here 15 years ago, you know, I'd been away since the 1980s. And when I came back, I'd try to greet him in German. And then he'd look at me and say, I don't know what that is, but that's not German.
My name's Daniel Danner. And I knew Eddie most of my life. Grew up around him. And he always took interest in me and loved to tell stories to me about logging and different things he was doing and working on. And he, being cheerful and positive like he was, he could suck you in, and you just hung on every word of every story that he had to tell.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, you're done. We're done. That's fine. I was just gonna. Is this off now? I was just gonna say one thing. I talk about marrying in the Bahnmiller family back here. I married Debbie Bahnmiller about 41 years ago, and Roland and Claudia, of course. Roland happily gave her away, and that's a joke. Sorry. Anyway, Eddie. I knew him because of that family, obviously. And then, of course, after Joyce passed away, he would come over a lot more for Sabbaths, for dinners. And we always had a good time talking. And I had the cars in common with him. And one time I asked him about 5 years ago, I go, Eddie, how do you put your pants on? Left leg first or right foot first? He goes, I don't know. But he said, I have a hard time getting my second foot in my underwear.
I hope one is okay. Well, anyways, thank you all. I love these stories. It's just incredible. It just brings a tear to my eye, but just a happy note to my heart to hear all these stories. Since the song has been brought up, I'm really glad I included it as part of the program, because what you're going to hear next is the $20 song that I learned so long ago. And Pastor Bill had it right. Dad offered me $20, which back then was like next to $1 million. But I learned it, and when I played it, as soon as I was done, I looked, I said, pay up. So hopefully you enjoyed the song. It's called Sabbath Chimes.
You know, I can think of probably one of the greatest blessings I've had while I've been in the ministry was meeting Eddie. And there are many good saints in the church, but Eddie was something special. And when I met him, we were doing some Bible studies, and I was looking for someone to go out and do those Bible studies. And Eddie volunteered. And so I picked him up, and we set a route that we were going to go on, and he knew the roads. And I was new up here. I didn't understand or know everything. And so Eddie's telling me where all these addresses are, and as I'm driving around the city, I missed a turn. I'm sure he didn't give me the directions in time, but he said, "Pastor, I love you." He said, "Would you like me to drive?" He was special. He was very encouraging, very loving, very kind. And I remember when he ended up falling and ended up in Regency, but he also ended up in the hospital for a time. And I went down to the hospital, and the room was full of beds, and the nurse was in there, and I asked her, and I told her who I was looking for, and she pointed over on the wall, and she said, "He's right there." I looked over, and I was expecting Eddie with his hair perfectly combed. I saw a bald man with a ponytail, and I didn't know it was him. And I'm looking at him, and I go up to talk to him, and as soon as I heard his voice, I recognized who it was. And he was the one that was sitting there sick. He was the one that was struggling from all the pain and everything else. And he asked me, "How are you doing?" Because that's who Eddie was. That's the way he was. He ended up back at Regency, and I went through what Mike was describing, the times as he was getting weaker and weaker. And I would come in eventually, and he didn't make a lot of sense. You couldn't really understand. You couldn't hear what he was saying. But I thought, I'll have prayer. And then I was going to leave. And we had prayer, and I started to get up and leave, and all of a sudden, Eddie started to pray like he was right there in the room. And he prayed for me and my wife and my daughter, and it occurred to me, like you said, there are times when he was there and he spoke, and you knew he had a connection. You knew that he was in touch with the greater power. He was in touch with the God that he loved. And he spoke, God spoke through him, and he was very loving and kind. In Isaiah, in chapter 57, verses 1 and 2, it says, "The righteous perish, and no one lays it to heart that the merciful men are taken away, not considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. He shall enter into peace, and they shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness." Now it goes on in 57, and it starts to talk about the other things of life, the things that are not so good. And we need to realize that we all go through this. We all go through a world that's stained by sin. But God has a plan, and in his mercy and in his love for each one of us, he's in charge, and he keeps us from the evil to come. And in Matthew chapter 7, verse 20, it says, "Therefore by their fruits you shall know them." And in John 15, 1 through 5, it says, "Jesus is the true vine. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it, that it may bring forth more fruit." Eddie went through life, and he went through trials. He went through problems, but he always kept the Spirit of God. He always kept the beauty and the peace that God gave him. And so we see that pruning in Eddie's life, but he responded in a positive, loving, kind, and hopeful way. As we watched Eddie in his life, he was a witness of someone who trusted God deeply. He was someone who went through the hard times, but he never gave up hope in what God had planned for him to do. And it says, "And every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it, that it may bring forth more fruit." Now you are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. We know that God was connected, and Eddie knew who that God was. He was told, abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, no more can you except you abide in me. Eddie abided with God. Eddie was connected, and as things happened in people's lives, Eddie was there to support, to encourage, and to lift up. I am the vine, you are the branches, Jesus said. He that abides in me and I in him, the same brings forth much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. Eddie never took credit for the joy that he had in his life. He gave the credit to God. And Eddie always tried to encourage other people. Eddie noticed what was going on around him. He wasn't just blinded and selfishly introverted into what was going on in his life. In 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 10, it says, for therefore we both labor and suffer reproach because we trust in the living God. Eddie knew that God, who is the Savior of all men, especially of those that believe. Eddie lived a life that demonstrated his belief and his trust. In closing, I want to say in Hebrews chapter 6, verses 18 and 19, that by two immutable things, in that it was impossible for God to lie, we might have strong encouragement, who have fled for refuge to lay hold upon the hope set before us. Eddie had that hope. And as we have that hope, we have the hope of meeting Eddie again and being with him forever, not to be separated by the pain and the death, by the diseases that happen, by old age itself. We will fly, it says, with wings like an eagle. Which hope we have as an anchor of the soul, both sure and steadfast, and which enters into that within the veil. We look forward to that time where we enter into the veil with Eddie, where we come face to face with God, where we look for a time when this will never end, but there'll be no more pain, no more suffering, and no more tears. In closing, I'd like to invite you to bow your heads and pray with me. Father God, thank you for the plan of salvation. Thank you for the love that Jesus showed. Thank you for the fact that he, in his life on this earth, developed a character that replaced the one that we lost when sin entered the world. Father, bring us close to you. And as we see you clearly face to face and fall in love with the countenance that you have, change us that we may look like you. You have promised us that when you come, we will know you because we will look like you. Father, we've seen what you can do in lives around us. Finish that work in us, I pray, that one day we all may look up and say, my Lord and my God, and I'll go home with you. For we ask in Jesus' name, amen.